All Singaporeans.
And you wonder what you're doing. Just kidding, guys. Like it becomes autonomy. Right. Welcome to the grand finals of BAC Debate Open. In opening gov, we have your mom. In opening opposition, we have Bukit Gasing A. In CG, we have our fishes wet. Closing opposition, we have, well, closing opposition. Right, new house rules. Yeah, be quiet. Don't like walk in and out of the room like during speeches. And yeah, keep discussions to a minimum. And what? Put your phones on silent.
No cheering.
Yeah, you know the drill. Yeah, no cheering and shit like that. Right. Prime Minister. Right?
Didi is the official timekeeper.
I love you, Mom.
Any other surprise announcements before I start?
Will the driver of the study?
Lawa. Ladies and gentlemen, within Yazidi Jewish communities, there is a term. It's called neighbor. Neighbor refers to someone that is still unmarried before the time that they're 22. In other words, they are also someone that is only loved by one person. That's your mom. So here's a couple of things that I'm going to do in opening government. The first thing, as someone yearning for love, as the actor that this motion requires us defend, the most important thing to me at the moment is affection. The metric to getting affection is control in a relationship. Knowing that you are better than the individual that you are dating, knowing and being sure of yourself and the qualities that you have, and knowing that this person truly loves you. But the second thing that must be noted in this debate is that you are living in a world that actively glorifies love. Irregardless of how intelligent you might be, the external effects of Hollywood affects the people around you. These people react to you. Yeah. These people are the ones that determine how happy you will be. With these things in mind, how is opening government going to win this debate? The debate will be defined on two things. If I can prove that settling and the removal of standards will make this person somewhat happier as compared to potentially having higher standards and the process of rejecting multiple people, that should be sufficient for me to win. So as this individual, what are we going to do? Firstly, we would lower our standards. This is not to suggest we will date any rando on the street. No, we will go through the process. We will have some standards that is significantly lower. So if we previously wanted this person to be very good looking, we will settle for the average person. If you wanted them to have a master's degree, maybe a diploma is fine. If you wanted them not to be a man, but I guess you can't go any lower than that. So there's a couple more things then. So the first thing, let me illustrate what the process of having high standards is like. So the fiat of the debate assumes that you can have high standards, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you are sure of yourself. Here are some reasons as to why. When you consistently date individuals and you consistently go through the process of, this guy doesn't really relate to me, I can't really figure out if they love me, or I just think that this person is dumb, it doesn't happen once. It happens repeatedly. You meet a really handsome or cute guy, you meet a cute girl, and they just don't reply to you on WhatsApp. They make you feel bad about yourself. The problem is that at some point, it stops becoming about that person, it becomes about you. If it is true that you are highly intelligent, does that make you unlovable? That is the type of existential dread that the people in opposition have to deal with. What does this process look like? It looks like wondering if you're always going to be alone because nobody can relate to you. Everyone is talking about FIFA and the World Cup. You're there talking about Donald Trump, the politics, okay, getting a bit too personal, and a couple of other things. But the second thing then that you have to know is how these people react when they eventually find someone that meets your high standards. These people are a 1 in a million, and you treat them like they are 1 in a million. You go nuts over these people. What does this mean? Because you've just gone through that process of rejecting people, figuring out that you don't really love them, figuring out that they're not really good for you, the one person that finally hits these ultra high standards, you would do anything to date them. You will go on your knees, you will buy them flowers on Valentine's Day, you will get them chocolates, despite the fact that you haven't really gone on a date. All these sorts of things happen. What does this do to you? Firstly, it makes you desperate for that person's affection. So irregardless of whether or not they truly like you, you put yourself in a position where you are vulnerable to this person. The reason as to why this is true is because you fear being lonely. You fear not finding anyone at all. So here's the first comparative in the debate. It is true that we are potentially settling in the world of government, but think about it. You're also settling in the world of opposition. The difference as to why it's significantly worse in their world is that you consistently try to hit their high standards. So note, you cannot have high standards and the fella also isn't a high standard person. They are likely to be great people as well. In the process of making them fit those high standards, you would actively try to falsify parts of yourself to make yourself look better than you actually are. Why is this true? A, you cannot sell yourself and undersell yourself to someone that is actively great. If you had high standards and they hit it, probably means they're pretty sure of themselves as well. So what does it then mean? It means you have to make sure and alter your personalities to make sure this person likes you the most. Even if they actively reject you, even if they are not compatible with you, you do anything in your power to make sure that you stay with this individual. Thus, on the first level of analysis, you are likely to be unhappy in the world of opposition because you put yourself at the mercy of another individual. But let's do a comparative. What happens when you settle? Relationships are unfortunately not about love. Love is not formulated. It comes much later in relationships. All these sorts of things, you cannot really control them. What you can control in a relationship is how the person makes you feel. Do they make you happy? Can you endure a 30-minute car ride with them? All of these things may not be love, but they are aspects to happiness that you want to opt into. But the second thing that happens there is that you know you can control this person. Notice, this is an active debate. It is fine for me to be selfish because the only thing I want is love. So what happens to the person that you're dating? I am quite certain, as one of the straight men in his room, I know the women I date are probably 10 times better than me. So what do I do given that? I try to make this person as happy as possible because I know they are out of my league. The person with the highest standards has to be the one that's appeased. That person has to become happier. I'll take you in a couple of seconds. So what does it mean? The person I'm dating, actually, I'll just take you now.
So what's wrong with that? With making them as happy as can be if it makes you as happy as you can be?
No. I think you misunderstand. The fella, he knows he's really dumb, so he will actively try to make me happy so that I don't leave him because I'm way more intelligent than him. Thanks for that clearing up. It would have been bad if he didn't. So here's the last harm to it. So notice, at this point in time, given that that person actively feels that they are inferior to you, their priority will be making you as happy as possible. This just means a couple of assurances. I know this person won't cheat on me because they know they can't do better than me. There is literally nothing out there that can satisfy them compared to me. So in conclusion, here's what opening government has proven in this debate. Firstly, the process of going through rejection and the process of figuring out whether or not you're just destined to be alone forever or whether or not you actively have standards or something is wrong with you is something that is inherently traumatic. But secondly, even if the person you settle for isn't that great, that's good because they actively try to make you happy. And at the end of the day, all we want is assurances. So please tell your mom you love them.
Right, zero opposition.
Good. The significance of man is not in what he attains, but what he longs to attain. That's Khalil Gibran, or at the very least, it's a poster outside of this room. This debate is simple. It's whether or not we are willing to gamble, to fight, to struggle for our dreams, knowing we may not reach it. It's a feeling that every single person in their life knows. Can I get straight A's? Can I win this tournament? Can I get that person? And here's what I tell you is important, that the ability for you to fight for that person is most likely one that means that you'll try to strive for that. It's obvious. If I want to have someone who has high standards, and as using the logic from opening government, likely that they'll have high standards too, it only makes all logical sense that I will try to keep up and strive to be an equivalent match. I'll try to study as best as I can, to work out, to eat, more healthy if it means that I think they want someone who looks good. What does that mean? This means that I'm likely going to try and match to what they want. This is similar to why exactly more often than not, prideful people try to keep up with appearances, try to look as good as they can. But secondly, what is this ideal person? And likely, what do they look like, or what's so unique about them that's ideal? More often than not, either one, they have the ideal looks that you want to have. But that doesn't specify what an ideal person is. That's just a good-looking person is. More often than not, it's one, a combination of having good looks, but also a combination of having the exact personality traits, the exact interests. Perhaps you like that laugh of theirs. Perhaps you have this idea of what a romantic movie character is, and you want that for yourself. And here's what I will tell you why that's extremely important. I'll explain to you two argumentations. Firstly, why exactly being with someone inferior is likely going to be something that's extremely horrible, and that means you're going to have greater harms later on. And secondly, why any evolution of your relationship will likely be so much worse later on. For that, closing.
Do you think someone can have a fulfilling relationship by the point to which they have no idea what they want from it to begin with?
Wait, sorry?
Do you think someone can have a fulfilling romantic relationship if they have no idea what they want from that relationship?
I'm assuming this is in context of what happens in your case, upon which obviously no, because we'll still try to achieve what we want, knowing that we might never achieve those kinds of things. So firstly, let's mitigate everything else. What is the point of yearning love? It means you're yearning companionship. It means you're yearning likely romantic companionship, sexual companionship. We think that at the very least, you can mitigate those things by replacing them with other things. It won't be perfect. Having friends, having family, having a hobby or a pet, or wanting to save the world as a dream won't be the same. But it can fulfill you in a certain way that perhaps that relationship can do the same. You won't do the whole thing, but perhaps it can fulfill some gaps. If you really want to have kids, then adopt or take care of your nephews or your nieces. If you really are just in it for the sex, get an escort. Become a sugar daddy, do whatever you want, just to be happy inside for one single moment. But what we think it does is it gives you the ability to mitigate everything else. Why? Because the comparative is so much worse. What is the reality of being with someone who you deem inferior, who you know and you feel to be inferior? It means your relationship never feels right. It means that you are never fully happy being with them. It means that because relationships are more than not taxing, relationships are based upon meeting the needs of the other. Relationship is putting in the energy, putting in the time, putting in the money. And more than not, we are willing to do so because we think it's worthy. And if we don't think it's worthy, we stop doing that. That's why people go to debate tournaments and spend money and do all this training, because they think debating is fulfilling. If you don't, look, you kind of stop. But why is it so important? Because it means that the moment you don't care as much as this person, everything becomes taxing. Everything becomes a chore. You hate going home because you don't want to see the person at home. You hate talking to them
on this,
and you hate hearing about them because their personality just never clicks. You hate even sex with them because it just never right for you. You can never become as wet as the fishes that CG wants to have because you're never able to do everything, knowing that the cost analysis is never correct. They can never achieve that level of happiness. And why is this so? It's because you have that fear within your head. The fear of, is this the best thing that I can get? The fear that you can never be truly happy with them. And that fear shows. That fear shows because your partner knows that you don't love them as much. Your partner knows that you are settling and you're not happy with that settlement. What does this lead to? This leads to worse relationships where you both know that you don't like being in that relationship, but you're only staying in it or appearance's sake, or because you feel lonely. Then you're just a club of horrible people who hate each other but just stay for the companionship. No, this means constant resentment, where you know you're better than them, where you think you're better than them, but every single thing they say infuriates you. Perhaps it's because they say often. Perhaps it's because of the way they act or what they think or how they vote. But you just absolutely hate that idea, and everything they do is a representation of that. It's the moment when this happens that it harms not just yourself, but your partner too. That you are harming a person who entered thinking that they will be in a happy relationship, who entered thinking that they'll be happy being with you, but no, they're just the exact same thing that OG wants to argue and Chris trying to create the harm on. No, it's even worse considering the long-term direction of that. Because in societal norms, what is the long-term relationship? What is the long-term direction of relationship? Is to have kids. And the moment you put kids into a relationship whereby both partners hate each other, where both partners don't want to be there, you're putting them in a loveless and toxic marriage where they fight each other every single day because they don't like each other. You put them in a relationship where either their parents get divorced and they live in a broken family, never really receiving fully love, because even you know this kid is someone you don't like, therefore you don't like this kid likely, or they'll stay together because of the social stigma on that pain. No, it's not just that. It's the fact that that harmful relationship often affects the way you're able to enjoy other things. If I don't like my partner, I don't like being able to realize that I spent money on this person I hate, that I spent money taking care of this relationship I hate, that divorce, meaning I have to pay alimony on something that I hate. At the very least, the comparative is simple. You can replace that with something inferior and try to replace that gap with something else that you do know you like at the very least. Go have a trip. Love your family, adopt some cats, become a crazy cat lady, all you want. At the very least, you know that you are able to have some value of happiness. That's not marked by the feeling and realization that that happiness is now ruined when it's with someone that you hate. Proud logos.
Here. Right, DPN.
Trying to find love with somebody that has higher standards than you, better looking than you, more intellectual, more rich, and every other standard that you can try to seem to find in today's world. And it's very hard for a person that is not it's very hard for the person to meet the standards or meet a partner with higher standards, because often you yourself would try, as Azim said, to keep up with the high standards of your partner. And keeping up the standards of your partner is extremely difficult. You often put on a mask to be someone that you are not, often compromise a lot of your fulfillments because this is a 1 in a million person that you might lose again, and you do not want to lose that person. And that is a struggle within relationships that we don't think is beneficial for that single person yearning for love. And it's okay if that single person is selfish. It's okay if the single person gets all the love that he wants to. And I'll tell you why in a few questions, whether or not this struggle is harmful, and secondly, whether or not you can actually find happiness and actually find love with a partner that you deem is inferior, or if the partner knows that she or he is inferior. Firstly, why the struggle is harmful. Exactly as Leader of Opposition said, that keeping up the standard is extremely hard. Often, you put yourself into an imposter syndrome. You alter your personality. And it's hard for you to actually self-actualize because you are not that person. You're just trying to be as high standard as your partner because you have so much of that impossible benchmarks to achieve. And that's extremely difficult. This creates a lot of existential crisis and existential threats, thinking about whether or not this is happiness. Blaming yourself that you yourself aren't as good as your partner with high standards. And this is crippling depression for a lot of individuals that don't feel that they can be as good as the partner with higher standards. There's a culture in society that often shames the person in the relationship that is more inferior. And if you are the person that is more inferior than the relationship, there's a lot of stigma for you to be coerced into wanting to give your all for that person, but sacrificing your own fulfillments, sacrificing your own happiness. And that is harmful, because within that relationship where the culture shames you, because you are the inferior person within that relationship, often what you do is that you try to compromise try to compromise your needs, compromise your wants, and is often also susceptible to more dysfunctional relationships. If the partner is going to be abusive towards you, you are also likely going to stay in that relationship because there's a culture that shames you if you're in that inferior person, or because that person is a 1 in a million partner that you can never get again. And then it's harmful for that person. Sure.
So assuming that you do have to keep up with someone who doesn't like you, aren't you literally doing the exact same thing on OG with someone who you deem inferior?
Yes, that's what we're doing, because that's why Navin said that it's okay as an actor or the single person to be selfish and to find love for himself only. That's what we're doing, and in this circumstance, that's what we are achieving. Also, for that person that is trying to meet up to that high standards, what you do is that you give a lot of leeway for that person or for your partner with high standards to abuse you. That's why if that person you like a lot does not reply to your text message or play hard to get, often what you do is you put yourself in anxiety, and then you think that's extremely harmful because you yearn for their attention, you yearn for someone that is higher standard than you. Obviously, you will also say that this culture and this stigma gives a ability for the person with the highest standard or the partner with the highest standard to be more dominant, and in this circumstance, he will abuse that dominance and make you feel like shit. What is the comparative? The comparative in this circumstance, as leader of opposition says, is that there are some mitigation. Maybe if you want sex, you can go to a prostitutes not even in Malaysia, but in other circumstances, maybe hookup culture, stuff like that, right? I think there's a better example. In those circumstances, we don't think you actually yearn for love. These are instances in which we don't think that person would actually want. Maybe love might be subjective, but we think that in this circumstance, it is very hard for you to find alternatives if the standard or the benchmark is already that high. But secondly, we think that even if in circumstances where Azim says that is sometimes you might not like the partner that is inferior to you, or you feel that it's like if you these are standards that you do not like initially, or this person does not meet up to what you think an ideal person should be, and often you would be unhappy. But the comparative is being single and alone. The comparative is going through all the struggles and the processes that Navin told you about, that you have to go through all the sort of anxiety and depression, compared to finding pockets of happiness with the person that you deem inferior to, or the partner that has lower standards than you. And in those instances, we think those happiness are easier to grasp, and those happiness is easier to ascertain, that is tangible, compared to an uncertain reality that the person with a higher standard might not acknowledge you at all. And in these circumstances, we think it's harmful for that person. Second question, will you actually be happy with an inferior partner? We think yes, you will, because we think that the process of finding love is not through artificial the initial superficial attraction, like this person is handsome, this person is rich, but we think that love develops once you start dating that person, once you start talking with that person. And we don't think that this person would initially that person would be turned off because maybe the partner has lower standards, but we think continuing on with that relationship allows the person to interact, to talk, and to formulate compromises or learn more about what he likes or dislikes in future relationships as well. Everything is easier for this person to obtain or understand what is easier or what he actually likes in future relationships. Because firstly, Navin told you that if you are the most superior one within that relationship, often you have more dominance and you have more control over what narratives that you want, or more control over instances of love in those similar relationships. We think that in this circumstance, you are likelier to create a more smooth process of talking and interacting with your partner in those circumstances. Yes.
So if you say that we can learn to love the person we're settling, why can't our settling partner learn to love us?
Yes, okay. So I think it's extremely hard because I said before, the person that we have, like the yearning for the person with the highest standard often also has some form of stigma to be abuse the power or whatever, all this kind of form of nonsense. We think that it's extremely harmful. But if the reverse works in your favor, where you are the most superior person, then you are likely to have better controls of those narratives, better controls of who you want and who you do not want. And I think that the comparative is just much better rather than just being alone, being depressed and being crippled. We think find tangible forms of happiness which you can actually see or actually obtain, and that's the better world that we believe that is much more important. I think the end conclusion to this is that love is easier for you to obtain, or happiness is easier for you to see when you are less vulnerable to yourself, or when you do not have to go through the anxiety to please the other person that might not acknowledge you at all. And in this circumstance, we think that this person actually achieves better happiness, actually finds the love that he is yearning for.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Deputy Prime Minister. Welcome the Deputy of Opposition.
What's it?
I don't know how to use Mac. I might press random buttons.
Yeah, so I'm gonna drop a bomb. My parents divorced when I was about 10. And I had a very casual-ish relationship with my dad. Talked to him about why he left. He just generally didn't feel like he's happy in the marriage. No, whether he's happy with me as a child, that's a different story altogether. But that had a lot of repercussions, objectively assessing. That had the repercussion of, for example, my mom having to bear the product of that marriage and that relationship for a very long time all by herself. I mean, even in terms of alimony, like even he wasn't that committed to paying alimony, even though he's supposed to, legally speaking. The point of it all is that there are long-term harms if you do settle, especially given the fact that as agreed by both sides, there is an end game and there is some expectation as to where this companionship will go. This is arguably, of course, the more practical and the more tangible impact of you just settling. But I'll tell you furthermore as to why there's a lot more, and it's only practical. It's not even the emotional abuse and emotional harm that comes along with you constantly having to superficially maintain obligations to a significant other that you don't feel is unfortunately a worthy investment. Because what I don't understand from the team before me is that there seems to be this presumption that I am yearning for this person, but for some strange reason, like I don't have like an interest to make sure that I stay, to make sure that this person is the person that I love, and that this person is the person that I clicked with, furthermore elaborated later. So because of that, why is it that it's okay for us to just stay and maintain ourselves in a relationship that we just do not want to be in the first place? I'll go further later on in my speech. No, thank you. So I'm just going to bring up two important arguments. First of all, I'm going to talk about happiness, and I'm going to talk about, no, thank you. I'm going to talk about the companionship that comes along with the right kind of person. Second of all, I'm going to talk about the long-term repercussions of you staying in a relationship that you do not want to be in. But before that, a few responses. So the team before me said that you are desperate for the person that you are yearning. Therefore, you will do whatever it takes for you to maintain the affection of this person, which also includes abuse. First of all, what no one explained from the opening document is how do you view this person on a micro level? Meaning the assessment that you've made on this person. Sure, it's not just the look of that person, but it's also their characteristics in terms of what kind of person are they. How are they likely to react to my weaknesses? How are they likely going to react to how I am as a person? The kind of way that she's engaged with me on the things that I'm into, on the things that I have very strong passions for. No, thank you. Or the fact that she just has a look that just speaks to me in a more exclusive way, in a way that no other person can also have. What this shows to you is that the reason why I have high standards is because I know there's no other person in the world that can maintain the same standard as this person. What this shows to you is that if I maintain a cost-benefit analysis and considering that this is how I'm weighing the benefit of this person,
I am likely to take that trade-off. I am likely to work as hard as I can, be fit. I'm likely to work as hard as I can, no thank you, to listen to whatever music or whatever song that she's listening to in order for me to try, and no thank you, try to maintain the same interest as this person because of how unique and how exclusive she is to me. So even if it feels like an imposter, it feels like, you know, I'm putting on a face, I'm putting on a mask that isn't necessarily that genuine, I still think that it's a worthy trade-off on my part because of how much I really like this person. In anything, this actually also applies to not just love. This also applies to many other things that we participate in. Like, for example, we at first think that we love and fall in love with competitive debating, but we spent tirelessly hours, nights, shouts by our coaches, shouts by the many people who have brought us down while we're training, just to achieve the happiness of us being a better person and being good at debating. Because surely I would also argue that it feels like an imposter for me to pretend like I like debating, or for me to pretend that I'm willing to go through the abuse that my coaches put me through. Yeah, a bit too real. But the point here is I'm willing to make that investment. No, thank you. I'm willing to make that investment, and I'm willing to be happy for that. But if the comparative is, they say that the rejection that we're going to go through, the unhappiness of being single and lonely is being bad, there's a key difference between going through the rejection and going through the unhappiness of being lonely and you settling down with someone that you do not want to be with. And that difference is, no thank you, is that there is an escape and there is an out for rejection and being single. The reason for this is because you can opt into other means of you being happy. You can distract yourself from being single, distract yourself from being rejected from other ways that make you happy in the first place. No, thank you. But if you are in a relationship that you do not want to be in, remember that you've already made the investment of you, for example, spending a lot of time with this person already, the fact that you have already felt like you don't want to be guilty and wanted to hurt her in the first place. So this shows that at the very least, it's a lot harder for you to leave a relationship that you're not happy with, as opposed to just dealing with the fact that you're single. And that is a worthy trade-off on our part. Yeah.
The motion says to date someone. If we do not have to prove that we find our one true love through that first relationship, why can't that person experiment or find the best partner when he has better control and certainty over the relationship on our side?
Okay, so I think regardless of what the motion says, the fact is, when we're dating someone, we're enjoying someone's companionship. And we're enjoying that someone's companionship, it makes sense for us to see whether we can drag that companionship as far as we can. That's why we date in the first place, for us to want to achieve marriage. So even if we're experimenting, the fact still remains that we want to date in the long, or find someone else in the future for us to get married with, because we just enjoy the companionship. Benefit that we can objectify and the benefit that we can quantify. That's why we stay in that relationship for a very long time. But moreover, the harm here is the abuse that other people would go through, which in return makes you feel horrible about yourself as well. Like, for example, the guilt that you would have to go through once you realize that someone is unhappy because of the way that you're slowly easing out of the relationship, because of the way that you're slowly not committed to the relationship, which in of itself is harm on your part, because it feels as if you are a horrible person. It feels as if you are someone that has completely ignored what this person wanted in the first place, on top of the many investments that you have made already on your part. That is unhappy. That is something that you should not want to go through, especially when there are other ways for you to be happy, even if it means for you being single.
All right, to open the debate on the closing half, member of God.
There are three reasons why we will take this debate. First, we will not make the false assumption that the opening houses made that all relationships are meant to last forever. In reality, in the status quo, as you see how relationships have evolved along with time, more relationships now are experimental in nature. The second false assumption opening houses made was that it assumed that all relationship partners are benevolent, are in your interests. If you explore the many relationships out there where your partner doesn't really care so much about you, or not as much about you as they care about themselves, then you realize there's a lot of harms that are accrued on opposition side. The third reason why we're in this debate is because we engage with the ultimate even if. Even if you happen to buy the argument that you need to be in a high standard relationship to be happy, we think we better we are the ones who actually achieve that in the long term because we have more experience. I'll explain that in detail later on. Before that, two questions. First, will you be happy in a high standard relationship? And our extension here is just going to simply say no, right? Because the kind of happiness metrics that your mind and the framework has developed in this sense of high standard relationships is one where happiness is pegged to certain factors, right? The happiness is pegged to the person you're dating being beautiful, being intelligent, being able to engage with you on certain types of issues. And this metric is particularly solidified within the first couple of years of the relationship because the metric is fixed. It's the same metric you have for the first 3 or 4 years of the relationship. Recognize that those factors, however, fade after a while, right? Beauty is something that fades really, really quickly. Intellect is something that goes down as you grow older. So the metrics and the framework that you have requires those metrics in order for you to be happy. And now, as people grow older, the metrics fade. No, to both of you. So what this means is that you're actually going to be particularly sad in these types of relationships. On the comparative, if you go into the relationship from the start, knowing that you're not going to have those same factors, you're going to seek happiness in a relationship from other areas. No, thank you. No, thank you. You're going to seek happiness in a relationship from other areas. So your framework of happiness isn't necessarily so ossified. So that's what we're going to say as extension material. Opening government tried to say also that you're going to keep up a mask, right? You're going to pretend to be someone you're not, and sometimes that makes you sad. You're going to go one step further, right? Because if you think about relationships, where the person you're dating, the partner, doesn't care so much about you or is actively benevolent, what does this mean in these sense of date and dump relationships? It means that you are basically chained to everything they want you to do. They are the decision maker in the relationship. They can demand things of you and you are forced to comply. They said you will actively do things that you think makes a partner happy. We say it in benevolent relationships, they'll make you do things that you don't want to do, but you're going to do it anyway. They can do things, no thank you, like tell you to buy them expensive things. They can ask you to put yourselves in compromising positions, sexually or otherwise. These are the things they demand you to do, make you sad at every instance, but you're still going to do it because you're so scared and you think they have high standards, whatever they said. We think our impacts are far greater. But even if these are good partners or partners that are not actively bad, recognize that many decisions in relationships are really, really important. Whether you have kids, where you live, whether someone has to uproot their job so another person can pursue their dream job in another country. These are critical decisions, and even in an even relationship where both partners care about each other, the decision-making power is always going to remain with the more intelligent, the more capable partner. So even in high-standard relationships, if we see in the vast majority of instances, they're not going to be happy whatsoever. I'm pretty sure I've proved the impact is greater than our openings did. Yes.
So to the point where someone forces me to do something I hate and harms me, at what point are they still the same person that I really want?
No, right. So you like the person because they're beautiful, but the person asks you to do other things irrespective of their beauty, and that is why they're still going to do it regardless. Second question. Will you be happy in an inferior relationship? Opening government tried to say yes because you spend lots of time with them and there's some shared experiences. They never really completed the argument. We think that it's more than that, right? It's the fact that you know that they love you back. That when you go back home, there's someone who's going to be there for you, someone you can depend on, someone who loves you back. These are the real reasons that you will still be happy, even if you're dating someone inferior. It's not about the factors of intelligence and beauty that they try to say it is. It's about other things, right? It's not just about sharing time with the person, but it's about the fact that there's someone that is always dependent, someone that can always love you and can show you affection. They try to have a defense of this, right? They said, you may fear the question, could I have loved you better? But in reality, you're not going to think this, right? Because the current perception is if you have one kind of love, you're not really considering other types. No. Let's break the tie. Let's break the tie even if you buy what they're saying, right? So even if you buy, sometimes these inferior relationships work out, and they say sometimes they don't work out. The reality is you can always break up. They try to say maybe you can't break up. They give several reasons. But let's just start by saying that there's a very huge reason to break up. Is that you're terribly sad for all the reasons, right? So you're extremely, if both partners are really sad, it's very strong motivation to break up. They try to say there are some countervailing factors. They said one, there's a social stigma. Okay, but there's also social benefits for breaking up, right? Because if you're seen as the one the person who initiated the breakup, for instance, then people are like, whoa, maybe the standards that you can demand are higher than the person you used to be dating. So there are always these benefits of initiating breakups. We think that counteract the types of things. They talk about kids. We think that, and we first recognize that kids often happen particularly late in a relationship. And the kind of factors we told you about happen pretty early on. So for instance, knowing whether someone loves you back, and you figure it out within the first 3 or 4 years of the relationship before you even have kids. We don't think that's really important. Final thing, in closing, in opening, they told us you really spend so much time on the person. This is just a sunk cost fallacy, right? In reality, people are not really that stupid on the balance of things. Final thing, let's look at the ultimate even if. Recognize on outside of the house that we have the ability to break up. And when we are okay with lowering our standards, it means that we are okay with dating more people, right? Because we have the time to date and if it doesn't work out, you break up and you can date even more and you can break up even more. No, thank you. OG says this allows you to figure out what you want. Okay, I think it's more than that, right? It's about the fact that you gain so many more experiences with each relationship that you go through. You get to figure out the kinds of things that particular guys or particular girls like. You get to figure out the different types of guys and girls out there and how to cater to each of their specific needs. This means that it's far easier for you in the future to use this data bank of experiences that you have outside the house to be able to select relationships and be able to make those relationships successful, right? So you can look at people on the street, you can tell which of them you want, and when you have decided, you have a far greater range of options as to who you can date, because now you have so much more experience, making you much more desirable. So even and also when you select a particular person, there's a greater probability of success that you can work it out with that person. So even if you happen to buy all of the arguments and they say, oh, it's so important to have a long-term, high-standard relationship, we think we do that better at the end of the day because of the huge amounts of experience that you get. Because our impacts were sufficiently distinguished from OG and were far more important, and because we've proven to you that we get all the outcomes they want to, even if you buy what they argue, I'm proud to stand on CG.
Right, call upon a member of
No, but if you disconnect the internet, we can stream. It's not mine. It's Michelle's.
Alright, call upon the gospel.
I think it's very strange for closing opposition to tell us that sure, people don't have to stay in relationships for the long term, but in the same speech tell us that their harms are worth 50 years in which you are unhappy with someone else to begin with. At the point where they accept that people can break up and can get divorced, this means that they literally cut off most of the harms that they want to talk about to begin with. I think that's the first, right? But more important, you just understand how exactly the opening debate fits first, and therefore why is it my member was the most important speaker in this house. And through that, I think there's a very clear response to opening opposition as well. So Isak starts by coming up and telling us that his parents got divorced, and therefore things are extremely terrible, and people just are unhappy all around. I think the main thing here is this, right? And just so you know, like my parents got divorced too, but this is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, I would like to say that my mom is a lot happier after she realizes what she wanted from her relationships anyway, right? Even if she got divorced, at least now she knows she no longer wants to opt into a marriage where she's been dating someone for 12 years, right? No thank you. All of these things suggest to you that individuals can be far happier even if they opt into relationships and they end up staying in for like somewhat long term. I think necessarily that these experiences can be proven to be quite important, right? And here are two like things that we therefore talk about. I think the first is that relationships and love by itself is unique and necessary. And these are all things that you cannot get from whatever opening up wants to talk about to begin with. So this is one of the ways that you deal with them already. I think the main thing here is this, right? That to the extent that you can get love from your friends, these are usually things that are quite different from romantic relationships to begin with. So recognize that this carves out most of the benefits that they want to talk about because this cannot exist on their side. No thank you. Which is necessary, even to the extent where you can love your friends and you can want to be around your friends and all of those things. You can be open with your friends, right? The kind of intimacy that you have with your romantic partners is on a vastly different level to begin with. You share everything with them, for instance. You tell them about every single thing that has happened to you, things that are traumatic, things that are happy. These are not necessarily things that you even open up to your closest friends, right? This is therefore why the kind of intimacy and the kind of skill is extremely different. No thank you. And to that extent, there are some needs that like romantic partners fulfill that necessarily your friends cannot. To that extent then, we deal with the entirety of the op bench when they tell you that you can get these kinds of needs from your friends at the point where you just are happier, not staying in any form of relationships whatsoever. Well, the second thing here is also this, right? And how exactly do we extend in comparison to our opening? I think the main thing that you have to recognize is that the opening debate is this. No thank you. Necessarily, they assume that you're never going to be happy with someone who's in a relationship with you with high standards. Here's the burden that we took here. Even if you were to be happy with the person that you opted into a relationship with, at the point at which you have high standards, you've already set yourself up for failure. This is necessarily one of the greatest things that I don't think the closing op actually does, right? At the point where we tell you that most of the kinds of high standards that we talk about are material in nature. Things like how good you look, things like your education level, things like how much you earn. And the reason why you set yourself up for failure is recognize this, that you glorify these kinds of traits to begin with. You talk about how important they are to you. At the point in which someone ends up going bald early, at the point in which someone goes bankrupt and loses their jobs, these are things that you can never be happy with or ever reconcile with. These are things that you gave yourself as reasons to love your partner, and now all of these reasons are gone. And to that extent, then, you essentially set yourself up for a life in which you cannot love your partner without these material things. We think this by itself is already particularly harmful. But the second thing is also this, right? Why then are the kinds of standards you have to talk about so important? I'll take opening.
If the standard of this debate is my personal happiness, and also assuming that my standards don't change, it is still as high as ever,
What's the point of this experience that you're enjoying?
Okay, so here's the thing. This is the second thing I want to talk about, right? That even if you meet someone with really, really high standards, the reason why these kinds of experiences that are important is this. Because you recognize the kind of boundaries and wants that you have with your future romantic partners. For instance, you recognize the kinds of things they dislike that people do. You're far more able to communicate with regards to these things because you know that some things are deal breakers for you. You know that some things will cause issues for you within your relationship. This makes it far easier for you to resolve these kinds of issues. No, thank you. It makes it far easier for you to be happy with your future partner, right? And this is the second part as to how we're different. Because the comparative here is this, that even if you really met someone who made you happy, at the point at which you have no idea what you want from this relationship, because you've never been in relationships before, because you have no experience as to how it is like to actually date someone else, this means it's far more likely the relationship ends up ending to begin with. So to the extent that you may have been able to be happy with someone who met your really high standards, this is something that no longer happens at all on the other side. No, thank you. So the comparative then is this, right? That you end up being miserable and lonely in the long term. The comparative is that you don't meet someone who actually makes you happy, even if you want to lower your standards, and even if you did meet someone who makes you happy, this happiness is probably not going to last. To that extent then, what we are arguing here is this, that even if you want to lower your standards, you don't have to stay with them for the long term. The point here is that at least you learn enough about yourself to become a better partner. So for instance, you're not abusive to your future partners unknowingly, right? All of these things are things that are required to work your future relationships out. All of these things are things that you'll never know like how to do on their side. Because if we agree that relationships change you and romantic relationships are fundamentally quite different, then this is the kind of unique experiences that you will never ever get on their side to begin with. So what exactly then did we cover today? I think the main thing here that we do is this, right? The first thing is that we argue why is it even if someone with really high standards makes you happy, because that's presumably the best case of opposition. It's something that is probably not going to last. So we take on a burden that our opening didn't do, because they only tell you they're never going to be happy with something like that. The second thing that we necessarily do is we give you some form of comparative as to why necessarily these kinds of experiences are important, right? Because to some extent, maybe they tried to gloss it over, maybe they tried to cover it, but I don't think that they actually did the kind of analysis required to tell you why these kinds of experiences are that important to begin with. And to that last extent, I think the main thing here is this, right? That even if you really, really wanted to date someone who who doesn't meet your standards, I don't think necessarily that you're always going to be unhappy. Because even if you end up settling for someone, let's just understand that this debate cannot work at the point at which you assume that every single relationship you enter will end. Because this debate has to assume that it's probably reasonably someone that you like to a certain extent to begin with, someone that you think you can tolerate, so that you want to try these things out. For those reasons, at the point at which it's possible that you explore your happiness, if not, you prepare yourself for your future happiness. Very proud to propose.
Right, to finish the debate, it's not fun now. Yeah.